This Tuesday in Sydney, Australia, Taylor Swift walked into a fashion show where whispers and judgment filled the air. But when Travis Kelce and an unexpected ally stepped in, the night turned into a powerful moment of support and authenticity. The night was alive with excitement as the exclusive fashion event unfolded. The red carpet gleamed under the bright lights, welcoming the city's most esteemed guests. Among them, Taylor Swift made her entrance, stepping gracefully onto the carpet in a simple beige dress. In a room full of bold sequins, extravagant designs, and flamboyant outfits, Taylor's understated elegance stood out. She wasn't trying to draw attention, but her presence was undeniable. As cameras flashed from every direction, Taylor remained composed. She gave a warm, genuine smile to the photographers, never overdoing it but acknowledging the moment with poise. She had been a public figure for years, well accustomed to the flashes and stares, but today, her calm demeanor showed that she didn't need the spotlight to shine. As the fashion show began, the front row buzzed with excitement, and two young influencers, dressed in eye-catching, shimmering gowns, settled into their seats just a few places away from Taylor. Their perfectly styled hair and heavy makeup made them stand out, but it was their loud whispers that quickly became noticeable. "Is that Taylor Swift?" one of them muttered under her breath, clearly trying to make sure her voice was heard. The other influencer squinted, glancing at Taylor's subtle beige dress. "Yes, but, beige? At an event like this? Honestly, it's so outdated." They both exchanged smirks, thinking their comments were a secret between them. "She was a star years ago, but now she's just trying to stay relevant," one said, her tone dripping with condescension. The two influencers giggled behind their hands, oblivious to the fact that Taylor, sitting quietly beside them, could hear every word. Despite being no stranger to public scrutiny, Taylor felt the sting of their words more than she'd like to admit. She kept her eyes forward, pretending to focus on the runway, but inside, she couldn't ignore the hurt. The industry had often been cruel to her, with the constant pressure to evolve, to stay on top. But it was moments like this, moments when people thought they could dismiss her because of her age or style, that felt the sharpest. She reminded herself to remain calm and composed. She'd been through much worse in her career, but these cutting remarks, though small in the grand scheme of things, made her wonder if they were right. Maybe her style wasn't as fresh or bold as some of the others here. Maybe she was starting to feel out of place. But Taylor refused to let the doubt show. Seated behind the two influencers, Travis Kelce was in the perfect position to hear their harsh remarks. He had been enjoying the show in his usual relaxed, composed manner, but when he caught the tail end of their conversation, his expression shifted. Their words about Taylor didn't sit right with him. He wasn't the type to let something like this slide. With a calm yet firm voice, Travis leaned forward just enough to make his presence known. "What exactly did you find so funny?" he asked, his tone controlled but with an unmistakable edge of authority. The influencers immediately froze, their laughter dying in an instant. They had no idea that someone like Travis, someone with such a powerful presence, was listening. And worse, they realized that their words had been overheard by someone who could, in an instant, turn the tide of this situation. The silence that followed was thick with tension. The influencers' smiles faltered, and the room around them seemed to quiet down. They quickly tried to backpedal, laughing nervously and brushing off their words. "Oh, it's just a joke," one of them said, her voice faltering slightly as she turned to face Travis. "We didn't mean anything by it." But Travis wasn't having it. His voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "I don't think you were talking about fashion," he replied, his gaze steady. "You were talking about a person." The words landed like a punch. The influencers, who had been so quick to dismiss Taylor, now found themselves caught in a moment of uncomfortable accountability. Their faces reddened as the realization hit. They weren't just insulting a celebrity's style, they were being downright disrespectful. The tension in the front row was palpable. It wasn't just the influencers who were feeling it anymore. Guests around them subtly began to shift in their seats, glancing over their shoulders, aware that something significant was unfolding right before their eyes. The energy in the room had changed. The fashion show, which had once been the focus of every eye, now seemed secondary to the quiet confrontation unfolding in the front row. All eyes were on the two influencers, who sat frozen in their seats, their earlier confidence evaporating like mist in the sudden tension. The whispered murmurs of the crowd intensified, as people subtly glanced over their shoulders to witness the fallout. For the first time in what felt like forever, Taylor Swift didn't feel like she was fading into the background. She had always prided herself on her quiet elegance, but at this moment, she felt something more. She felt seen. It wasn't the superficial attention that came with being in the spotlight, but something deeper, something more validating. Travis had spoken up for her, and his words resonated through the room like a quiet storm. It wasn't just about defending her against the influencer's cruel remarks. It was about standing up for what was right, about recognizing the value of kindness and respect over judgment. The two influencers, who moments ago had been making snide comments with ease, were now visibly uncomfortable. They shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes darting around, unable to find an escape from the weight of their own words. The same confident expressions they wore so freely earlier were now replaced with uncertainty. They had been called out, not by a celebrity trying to prove a point, but by someone who understood the power of standing up for others without raising his voice. Travis Kelce had become the unexpected ally Taylor needed. Taylor sat tall, feeling the quiet strength of the moment. There was no need to defend herself, Travis had done that for her. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone. She felt empowered, like she had the support of not just one person, but the quiet but powerful force of the entire room standing behind her. As the fashion show continued, the runway models walked with grace and confidence, but the real spectacle had already shifted. The influencers, once so full of self-assuredness, were now visibly shrinking in their seats. Trying to distract themselves, they pulled out their phones, pretending to be busy scrolling through their feeds, but it was clear to everyone around them that they were no longer the ones in control of the narrative. Their earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced by a quiet discomfort that they couldn't hide. Taylor, on the other hand, sat poised and composed, her confidence growing with every passing minute. She had been the target of judgment just moments ago, but now, she felt the weight of the situation shift. The whispers about her faded into the background, and she realized something important: she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The shallow judgments of others no longer mattered. She had come to the event as herself, and in that moment, she understood that her worth wasn't defined by others' opinions. She straightened in her seat, her posture more confident than it had been all evening. The simple beige dress she wore, once a symbol of quiet elegance, now felt like a statement of independence, a reminder that true style wasn't about conforming to the latest trends but about wearing what made her feel authentic. Taylor was no longer concerned with the opinions of those around her. She was standing strong in her own truth. As the show carried on, Taylor caught a subtle movement out of the corner of her eye. Travis Kelce gave her a small nod. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it carried so much meaning. His silent acknowledgement of her strength was everything she needed in that moment. It was a gesture of support, one that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. Taylor smiled to herself, feeling grateful and more powerful than ever. As the final model made her way down the runway and the applause filled the room, Taylor rose from her seat. She gathered her clutch and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the night's events settling in. For the first time in a long time, she was leaving a public event feeling truly at peace with herself, not burdened by the expectations or judgments of others. As she made her way toward the exit, a familiar voice called out to her, pulling her from her thoughts. "Taylor, a moment?" The voice belonged to Isabel Lauren, a respected journalist known for her sharp interviews and insightful commentary. Taylor smiled, her expression calm and collected, knowing that Isabel had witnessed the tension and the resolution of the night. she turned to face her. Isabel didn't waste any time. "I have to say, you stood out tonight. Amongst all the loud opinions and judgment, you stayed true to yourself. It was inspiring to watch." Taylor paused for a moment before answering, the words she had been holding in now ready to be spoken. "Thank you," she said softly. "But honestly, I don't want the story to be about me or my dress. What matters is how women in this industry are treated, how often we are told that we need to reinvent ourselves, to fit into a mold, to be something we're not." Her eyes met Isabel's, her voice growing steadier with each word. "The beauty standards we're expected to meet can be suffocating. But tonight, I realized something important. Authenticity is the only thing that truly matters. I want women to know they don't have to fit into a narrow idea of beauty or success. We can just be ourselves, unapologetically." Isabel nodded, clearly moved by Taylor's words. The interview would no longer just be about a fashion show. It was about a bigger conversation, one that needed to be heard. As Taylor stepped out of the venue, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. The night had been a whirlwind, but she knew it had been a turning point for her. She was no longer concerned with the whispers or the judgments. She had stood tall, defended by Travis, and supported by her own growing sense of self-worth. As she made her way toward the exit, ready to leave behind the noise of the evening, an unexpected figure appeared in front of her. It was Coco Chanel, yes, the Coco Chanel. The iconic fashion legend whose name had shaped the industry for decades. As Taylor turned to see her standing there, a rush of disbelief filled her chest. Chanel, with her silver hair shining in the dim light, exuded an air of authority and grace. And without hesitation, Coco stepped forward, her eyes locking onto Taylor's. "My dear," Coco said softly, taking Taylor's hands in hers, "you remind me of true elegance." The words hit Taylor like a wave. To be recognized, to be acknowledged by someone who had redefined elegance itself, was a validation like no other. The influencer's cruel remarks, the moments of doubt that had crept in earlier, seemed insignificant now. They had no power in the face of this. Coco's gaze was steady, her smile genuine as she continued, "Elegance isn't about standing out. It's about being timeless, about being authentic to yourself." She squeezed Taylor's hands, a gesture that spoke volumes without needing further explanation. In that moment, Taylor realized something profound. She no longer needed to prove herself to anyone. Her authenticity, her quiet elegance, had already been recognized by one of the most influential figures in fashion. And that was worth more than any fleeting approval. The influencer's words faded into the background, drowned out by the weight of Coco Chanel's validation. As the night continued to unfold, Taylor's perspective had completely shifted. The earlier doubts, the harsh judgments, and the whispers from the influencers, all of it seemed to evaporate in the presence of Coco Chanel's validation. Taylor had always been a force in her own right, but now, she felt something deeper, something more lasting. She no longer felt the need to fight to stay relevant. The world of fashion, entertainment, and public scrutiny often made women feel pressured to constantly evolve, to stay ahead of the curve. But in that moment, Taylor realized that real elegance wasn't about fitting into the latest trends or chasing fleeting approval. It was about staying true to yourself, maintaining a timeless style, and carrying yourself with confidence. True power came from within, not from the clothes you wore or the opinions of others. As Taylor made her way out of the venue, she was aware that the night wasn't just memorable because of the fashion or the drama that had unfolded. Journalists and guests were still buzzing about the moment. The influencers, who had once tried to belittle her, were now relegated to the sidelines, their words fading into the background. All the chatter was about the authenticity that Taylor had displayed, how she had stood her ground without having to conform, how her quiet strength had spoken louder than any flashy outfit ever could. Taylor knew that her impact wasn't tied to the fabric of her dress or the latest fashion statement. It was the strength, the authenticity, and the quiet confidence she embodied that made her truly unforgettable. She had become a symbol of timeless elegance, not because she sought it, but because she simply was it. As she stepped into the car waiting outside, Taylor looked out at the city that had once demanded so much from her. Now, she was confident in her place, not just in the industry, but in her own skin.